One of the things that worries me most about our modern political environment is when our politicians and our leaders don't listen time and time again to what people tell them. So we've got people going over and over their worries, their concerns about how the country is changing. In particular, the flare point for all of that is the demographic change, mass migration, and the fact that huge amounts of taxpayer money is being used to fund what are primarily illegal migrants, as well as the full migration bill and everything else. And this is really annoying people, and the politicians are not interested in discussing it. Now, in Ireland, we are watching a speeded up version of all of these events. Now, what I'm about to show you here is a distressing image, I would say, with regard to what's happened in Ireland. So here's the image here. So what you're witnessing there is there was a house of multiple occupancy. A local young person has been assaulted in the worst way imaginable. And what's happened is some ne'er-do-wells from the local community have decided to take things into their own hands and allow mob rule to take hold. Now, this is akin to what we would see in developing countries some of the time, where something happens and then a crowd of people go, they take that person and they execute what they would call public justice. Swift, brutal, nasty, and how they would see it, necessary. Now, this is never a good thing to do. I'll make that clear from the outset. I find attacking people, not using the law, to be reprehensible, particularly setting fire to a house. There can be no one forgiven for that, and that's not what this video is about. I am a strong believer in the rule of law. I think the rule of law works. The court system, however frayed at the edges, however it sometimes doesn't get it all right, I'm a strong believer in the rule of law. I don't think justice is a thing that we see often, but that's a completely separate argument. We are an imperfect species with imperfect laws and, with primeval brains. And right now, the rule of law, as we currently have it with our court system and jury system, etc., is the best thing we've got. And we need to cling on to that. That's aside from the images that you've just witnessed there, though, isn't it? The images that you've just saw there are what happens when you take a mass group of people and impose something on them which they are extremely concerned about. What ends up happening is you get people at the periphery of society acting in this type of a way. And again, I'm not validating this or saying this is okay, far from it. This is terrible. But when politicians refuse to listen to people and people feel that their communities are under threat, this is what we can expect to see from certain members of our society. And as I said earlier, Ireland is on speed dial here. We are watching a revved up version of what's been happening in England. It started well after. We've been doing mass migration in the mainland of the UK, we can call it, if that's the right way to say it, for many years. But in recent years, Ireland have decided to do their best to catch up, and they are revving things up to unimaginable levels. And of course, what we're witnessing in Ireland, sadly, is going to be coming here. And this is a worry for a lot of people, because this is obviously going to happen on a mass scale, and this was what the government was so concerned about last year. I can only hope that before we reach this point here, that our politicians start to take note. They start to understand we do not want this as a group of people. And if you continue with these policies and in effect ignoring people, treating them like morons, treating people like fools, coming out with saying, oh, we're smashing the gangs, when everybody knows that there's nothing happening, when they keep coming out and saying, oh, the economy's doing great, isn't it, when everyone knows it isn't. You are creating a divide between the politicians who ultimately represent law and order. That is the representation of law and order in this country, not just the police. They represent the rule of law. And when we stop believing politicians entirely and they're disconnected from the feelings and thoughts from normal people on the street, then you get instances like this happening. And as we continue to go further down this road, unfortunately, things like this are going to escalate. And this is a worrying development. I'm very concerned for Ireland. And I hope at some point all of the politicians can start to sit up, take notice and act upon what everybody has been trying to tell them for year after year. Anyway, thanks very much for your time. I appreciate it.